The crowd gasped as a drunk tourist spat directly in the face of a royal guard. Everyone waited to see what would happen next, but what happened after that turned into a true nightmare for him. Let's start from the very beginning. Early morning. In London, the crisp, fresh air was filled with the aroma of pastries and coffee from nearby cafes. A crowd of tourists had already gathered near Buckingham Palace, gazing in admiration at the royal guard standing at their posts, silent, motionless, proud statues in red tunics. And among them was him, Danny, a tall, lanky man in his 40s with a worn-out face, a hazy stare, and the heavy stench of alcohol radiating from him like an invisible cloud. His clothes, a wrinkled orange jacket, filthy jeans, and scuffed sneakers, revealed a man whose previous night had never really ended, drunk, wasted. He had come to London to have fun, but instead of soaking in the city's history and culture, he had soaked himself in alcohol. Every night, new bars, cheap drinks, drunken antics. And now, in the morning crowd, he was looking for entertainment, and he found it. His blurred eyes locked onto a royal guard standing motionless at the gate. Danny smirked. "Let's see what you've got, wooden soldier." He staggered forward, pushing through the crowd. Someone muttered in annoyance. Someone else recoiled at the stench of booze, but Danny didn't care. This day was going to be his day. Danny stood face to face with the guard, so close that the tip of his sneaker nearly touched the soldier's boot. Leaning forward, he examined the young man's face. The guard was tall, broad-shouldered, with a chiseled jaw and a flawlessly clean-shaven face. He didn't flinch, didn't blink, as if he had been carved from stone. Danny's smirk widened. "Come on, blink just once." He started making ridiculous faces, bulging his eyes, contorting his mouth. He waved his hands, miming fake punches near the soldier's face, jerking around in exaggerated movements like a drunken clown trying to get a reaction. The crowd murmured, "Dude, what are you doing? Why is he messing with him? Oh, this is about to get interesting. Record this." Phones went up. People sensed a scandal brewing. But the guard didn't move. Not a twitch, not a single reaction. Danny's smirk twisted into a frown. This wasn't part of his plan. He was used to attention. He was used to his antics provoking something. Annoyance, laughter, anger, anything. But now, nothing. Total indifference. Danny felt a slow burn of rage rise inside him. His heart pounded faster, alcohol swirled in his head, but one thought cut through the haze. "I won't be ignored." And then he did it. He spat, directly in the guard's face. The wet splatter cut through the air like a gunshot. Silence. The crowd gasped. Someone covered their mouth. The spit dripped down the guard's pristine, polished uniform. A tiny, disgusting stain on the immaculate reputation of the royal guard. Dead silence. It felt as if even the streets of London had frozen, waiting for what would happen next. Even the traffic seemed to quiet. All eyes were on one thing: the guard. But nothing happened. He didn't flinch. He didn't wipe his face. He didn't even look at Danny. He simply stood there. A statue. Silence stabbed at the ears. Danny swayed slightly, then smirked again. He thought he had won. He thought he had conquered this moment. But what he didn't know was just how terribly wrong he was. The crowd erupted. At first, a stunned whisper, shocked stares, people clutching their mouths in disbelief. Then, the voices rose. "What a disgrace!" An elderly man shouted, gripping a tourist brochure. "Are you insane?" a young woman yelled, her phone still recording. People couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. The Royal Guards were a symbol of the country, honor, discipline, tradition. And some drunken American had just spit on one of them? Danny only smirked. Zero remorse. Zero shame. He staggered back, his mouth dry, his eyes glassy. He leaned in again, trying to poke the guard's chest, but barely kept his balance. "Oh, relax," he croaked, his voice hoarse but loud. "He didn't even blink." He glanced around, expecting laughter, cheers, maybe even applause. But no one was laughing. People stared at him with pure disgust. His stench, his filthy clothes, his drunken swagger. He was everything people hated in a tourist. "Typical American," someone muttered with contempt. "They should just kick him out." They despised him. But the worst part? It wasn't the crowd. The worst part was that the guard still hadn't moved. Absolute indifference. Danny clenched his teeth. What the hell? He had been sure he could make this mannequin react, but the guard remained an immovable force. Like Danny was nothing, like he didn't even exist, and that infuriated him the most. He was about to do something else. Maybe grab the guard's belt, maybe try poking him again, but he didn't get the chance. Because then it happened. That step. A sharp, heavy thud. The guard stepped forward. His black boot slammed against the stone pavement with a thunderous crack. Silence. Danny froze like a rabbit in headlights. Everyone froze. The sound echoed across the square like the strike of a hammer. And then, a voice. Deep, stern, thunderous. "Stand back!" He didn't shout. He didn't scream. He commanded. That voice cut through the air like a blade. That voice was louder than any siren. That voice instilled fear. Danny staggered backward. His body jolted. His head spun. The alcohol, the heat of humiliation, the raw shock of hearing that voice, it all collided in a dizzying blur. His legs buckled, and he fell, face first, straight onto the pavement. The crowd erupted again. Laughter. Loud, sharp, merciless. People were howling. Some were crying from laughter. Some whistled. Some kept filming. "Karma, buddy." "Serves him right." "That was amazing." Danny lay there, his cheek pressed against the cold stone, humiliated. He clenched his fists. He was furious. He could hear the laughter, feel the mockery crushing him. The crowd was mocking him, and he couldn't stand it. He decided he wasn't going to let this go. The air was on fire. Danny shook with rage. His heart pounded in his chest like a caged animal, and his face burned, not from the alcohol, but from sheer humiliation. That damn laughter. The crowd was laughing at him. First, whispers, then muffled chuckles, and now, full-blown laughter. "Looks like karma works fast," someone shouted. "Dude, have you ever thought about becoming a comedian?" Another tourist smirked, recording on his phone. "What a disgrace." An old man in glasses shook his head in disappointment. But worst of all was the guard. That lifeless mannequin. Standing there, completely still. No emotions, no reaction. As if Danny didn't even exist. As if he wasn't even worth looking at. As if he was nothing. Blood rushed to Danny's head. He clenched his fists. He couldn't let this slide. He wouldn't let himself be ignored. The direct challenge. Danny snapped up from the ground, slapping his knee as he stood. His face was burning with humiliation, but his chest boiled with rage. "You think you're a hero, huh?" His voice was hoarse but loud. The crowd fell silent. "Hiding behind that stupid bearskin hat?" He jabbed a finger at the guard, stepping closer. The guard said nothing. No reaction. Absolute indifference. Danny couldn't take it. His fingers trembled with tension. His breath was heavy with anger. He took another step forward, raising his hand. But he never got the chance. A steel grip clamped down on his shoulder. A powerful yank backward. Danny whirled around and then froze. The security officer, tall, very tall, chest like a steel slab, arms like concrete pillars, eyes like an executioner who already knew his verdict. That look was worse than any scream. "You're under arrest!" The crowd roared, but not like before. Now, applause. Some whistled in excitement. "Oh, now that's justice!" someone yelled. "Finally, get this idiot out of here!" Danny lunged to the side, trying to break free. Pointless. The officer twisted his arms behind his back with brutal efficiency. And then, Danny heard that sound. Click. Cold metal locked around his wrists. Handcuffs. He had lost. He blinked wildly, trying to process what was happening. How did this happen? How did things go wrong so fast? This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He couldn't believe it. But it was too late. An iron grip. Danny thrashed, twisted, tried to break free, but the officers held him like a vice. Every time he yanked, they pulled him back even harder, and every time he struggled, he was met with the same silent, crushing force. The crowd watched like an audience at a live-streamed spectacle. Phones. Everywhere. Their lenses captured every detail of his downfall. He felt their eyes on him, some judgmental, some mocking, but they all sent the same message. You lost. He couldn't take it. "Hey, let me go!" he screamed, his voice drowning in the noise. No one listened. The crowd only got louder. "Oh, this is internet gold!" A teenager practically squealed, filming on his phone. "God, what a disgrace." An elderly British man shook his head in disgust. "Someone doesn't know how to behave in a civilized country." The officer holding Danny's arm didn't even blink. "And you assaulted a royal guard." The words hit like a slap across the face. Danny froze. Something snapped in his drunken brain. "What?" His voice cracked through the crowd's cheers. "It was just a spit." The officer didn't even glance at him. "Assaulting a representative of the Crown on duty is a criminal offense." The crowd went wild. "Record it! Record it! I want to rewatch this forever!" A man shook his phone, laughing. "Someone send me this for TikTok. This is going viral." A girl in a pink jacket giggled, capturing every second. Did he really think he'd get away with this? Danny heard every word. Each sentence cut like a knife. Each laugh sent another shockwave through his nerves. Each stare dragged him deeper into his own humiliation. He lunged again, trying to break free, but the officers held him like stone pillars. He couldn't escape. He was trapped, completely. His steps were unsteady, his body swaying, but they dragged him forward, not letting him stop. The van was right in front of him, white, blue stripes, a smooth metal surface reflecting the city lights. "Let me go! This is a mistake!" Danny gasped, his voice cracking from fear, anger, and alcohol. But no one cared. The officers opened the van's door. They shoved him inside. Cold metal slammed against his back. Click. The door locked. Danny blinked. Darkness. The stench of dust, metal, and old leather seats. Silence. He jerked his head up. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. His breathing was ragged. He lifted his gaze. And through the small grated window, he saw him. The guard. Still standing there. No emotion. No movement. As if nothing had happened. As if this day was just like any other. As if Danny never existed. Something inside his chest tightened. He couldn't look away. Outside, the crowd kept living their lives. People laughed, talked, recorded. But he was still standing. Standing exactly as before, as if Danny was just empty space. Danny blinked, took a slow, shaky breath. And one single thought echoed in his mind. Something had changed. 2 days later, London moved on. Pigeons swirled over Trafalgar Square. Tourists snapped selfies at Big Ben. In a cafe somewhere, a barista poured another cappuccino, blending velvety foam with rich espresso. None of them knew Danny personally, but everyone knew about him. At every newsstand, outside every subway station, on every mobile news feed, his face stared back at the world under bold, unforgiving headlines. American tourist arrested for assaulting royal guard. Buckingham Palace scandal, a foolish act that cost a tourist his freedom. A national embarrassment, how one tourist disrespected British tradition. Every article squeezed the story for every last detail. They dissected. How he got too close. How he provoked the guard. How he spat in the face of a man who wasn't even allowed to move. How he fell, face first in front of everyone. How the police dragged him away. No sympathy, just facts, just a cold, brutal breakdown of his humiliation. But the newspapers were nothing. The real hell began online. The internet exploded a viral video. In just 48 hours, millions had seen it. His fall, his scream, his spit, his arrest. The footage spread everywhere. TikTok. Slow-motion edits of his fall, set to dramatic music. Memes captioned, "When karma comes faster than expected." Remixes, his panicked cries turned into a bass-heavy track. Millions of likes, tens of thousands of comments. Half the world had seen his shame. Twitter, X, people ripped him apart. Finally, these disrespectful tourists are getting what they deserve. He had it coming. No respect at all. Well, he's famous now, just not in the way he wanted. Pretty sure his family isn't proud of this one. Tens of thousands of retweets, YouTube, reaction videos from influencers, titles like, "This tourist made the dumbest mistake of his life." Long breakdowns analyzing why he got exactly what he deserved. Likes, views, shares. But the worst part wasn't the numbers. The worst part was that, out of millions of comments, not one defended him, not a single voice took his side. Not one. He wasn't a victim, he was a punchline. Cold reality. Concrete walls. Gray, cold, filthy. The stench of damp air, sweat, and dust. The distant footsteps of guards outside the door. A hard cot beneath him. Danny sat motionless, staring at the ceiling. Silent. His hands hung limp at his sides. His head wasn't pounding from a hangover. He wasn't thinking about getting out of this. He wasn't thinking about talking his way out. There was no way out. He couldn't change this. He couldn't escape. He just sat there, listening to the silence of his cell, and realizing something inside him had broken. He thought he was just some drunk troublemaker, someone people would forget in a day. But he was wrong. He was a meme. He was a joke. He wasn't remembered as a person. He was remembered as a disgrace. He used to be somebody. Now, he was just the spit. Now, he was just a mistake. A mistake that never goes away. This wasn't just a dumb moment people would forget. This wasn't just a bad decision that would fade. This moment would be online forever. Forever in internet archives. Forever in the memories of those who laughed. Forever in his own thoughts. He closed his eyes. Fingers curled into his palms. The cold metal of the handcuffs had left deep marks on his wrists. And for the first time in his life, he didn't feel angry. He didn't feel desperate. He only felt empty. He hadn't just messed up. He hadn't just made a mistake. He truly, deeply regretted ever being born.